Hi and welcome to another episode of the Voices of Boyle podcast. We're fairly getting through them now, and before I introduce today's guest, myself and Carla would just like to wish everyone a very happy Christmas and a happy New Year. We're looking forward to all the episodes that are going to come in 2023. So on to today's guest. We chat with Mary. Most of you will know Mary from The Little Chicken Boyle. I was so delighted to get to record some of Mary's stories because she's a wealth of information on the town of Boyle, and we chatted all about her early days growing up in Emla, which is an area in Killaraght. We talk about National School, her time in boarding school, and then moving to Dublin and back to Boyle in 1976 when she opened the Little Chick with Loreto. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I enjoyed recording it, so let's get started. Welcome to the podcast, Mary. Great to have you on.
Thank you, Flora.
So, Mary, tell us what it was like in the Queenan household at Christmas time in the 50s and 60s.
Looking back on it, they were fabulous times. I still often say, as children, we had nothing, but we had everything. Today, children have everything, but they have nothing in many ways. Usually the weather, we always had snow, maybe leading up from the end of November, beginning of December. I can still visualise the holly trees with the buds, which we'd be all dying to have for Christmas as part of the decorations. The old floral homemade decorations. Other decorations then my mum made at the ICA classes out in Kingsland National School. They'd have winter classes on there. All women would go and start making all different decorations. I remember they used to take little bits of branches of trees and dip them in hot wax, and then the hot wax would solidify, and they were used as part decoration amongst other things. But remembering back right into Santa, the first week in December, and that time you'd ask for a mouth organ, a drum, a Jew harp, maybe a doll, or the boys might ask for a tractor. Seldom they got one. And I really, the one thing always stands back in, we would be brought to town. I think it was before the 8th of December, down to McDonald's. Little did we know Mammy was buying the
bits and
pieces at that time. And I can still see all the toys hanging out of McDonald's ceiling in the shop. Lucky bags, all kinds of everything. It just sticks in my memory, and always will. Then the 8th of December, of course, Santa would come to Taylor's.
Yes.
And years after that then he came to Londis's old shop, not the one they're in now at the corner. But Taylor's was the one we would have gone to in those times, down into the hardware shop, and the magic of that seeing Santa. Then, coming nearer Christmas, Mam would always be baking special cakes, icing them, putting a little chalk robin up on top, and a little paper kind of a decoration surrounding the cake. And of course, the famous plucking of the turkey took place then. But we didn't like the turkey being plucked. There was feathers flying for a week afterwards. And the gammon or ham that time... All the neighbours that time would have a pig killed, and they would share the meat between them. So I presume that's where our ham came from. And there'd be a big shop done in Conniff's in Ballahadreen then for sausages, different types of pork, black pudding, rashers, sausages, and there's something else I just can't remember now, which you really only got at Christmas. Then... of course, the Christmas cake with all the icing, I did say that. And come up nearer Christmas, then we'd all be busy washing floors. Maybe the kitchen would have to be painted. If there was anyone's extra coming for Christmas visiting, you had to make sure rooms were tidied. Better than they normally were, maybe. And Christmas Eve, then we'd always go to the church for Mass or some devotion. And we'd be well warned. We had to go to bed early that night. And I still remember looking out the windows. And if we were talking, Mammy'd say, listen, the Santa, was it that had passed by the house that night, or had he elves or someone that had passed? But we'd never talk, say, after 10 o'clock at night then, in case if we were heard that Santa wouldn't come. So we'd be awake then, up maybe at 6 o'clock in the morning to find Santa, and the magic of it. I can still see the little Santa presents in different parts of the kitchen. So we'd play with those for a while, and then off to Mass in Breejoke for 9 o'clock. There was 6 children of us in it, and Mum and Dad all in the car. And the choir would be singing up there, and then coming home, meeting different ones along, which Dad might stop and have a word with, especially if there were people home from England or something. We'd stop and have to chat with those. Then home, and there'd be the breakfast. And we might get an extra sausage. Instead of 2, we might get 3 sausages for the breakfast Christmas morning. And after that, then Mam would be cooking the dinner for, I think those times we didn't have the dinner until 3 o'clock, whereas normally Sunday dinner was always at 1. And we used to love the stuffing in the turkey, all the different things that you normally wouldn't get except at Christmas. Then the plum pudding, the custard, and a trifle was made, and we'd be having that all evening. After 10 o'clock at night, then there'd be sandwiches made.
With the turkey, Mary?
With the cold turkey, but some of us preferred the cold ham rather than the turkey. Then the excitement was getting up Stevens this morning, because we would go out on the wren. Even though false faces were bought for us in McDonald's again, the elastic used to snap sometimes at the side. So then Mam would have to get twine and adjust that for us. And we'd have feathers out of our heads or hair. And we'd go round to the neighbour's house. Now, those times, you always played music or sang. You just didn't go round and meet and greet people at the door. We always played music, and maybe somebody would sing or someone might try and dance. We weren't gifted at the dancing. So we might spend 3 or 4 hours out and come home then count the money.
Yeah.
I can still see the threepenny piece. I think it was the biggest a unit of money we got from anyone those times. Then, of course, New Year was another big thing. Not as much as it's big now. The expenditure wasn't as great then as it is now. And
what would you do normally for New Year's, Mary? Would different friends and family come over, or would it be just a family thing where
the aunts and uncles, if we didn't go down to them, they would come up to us? But you'd never say have neighbours coming in New Year's Eve. There was what they called that time a pishtarogue on New Year's Day. Certain families, if it was a red-haired woman came to the house, they wouldn't let her in. It was supposed to be bad luck for the rest of the year.
Really?
Yeah.
On New Year's Eve?
New Year's Day.
New Year's Day.
I'm sure that was the day it was. A red-haired woman.
That's gas. So all the redheads would have to be locked up in case they'd go around. Mm-hmm. That's gas. I never heard that before.
Yeah, I remember as well.
And God, some lovely stories that jogging some memories there for people with all the little details. So the decorations Mary mentioned, and I know we've spoken about this so many times, but the real old-fashioned decorations, everybody had them. The foil ones, the shiny red and yellow and gold. Yeah. Did you have them back in your day, or were they different ones?
Well, the ones when we were young, they were made from crepe paper.
Right, homemade kind of
Yeah,
ones.
but we used to always buy again McDonald's. And there was one then, a centrepiece out of the light, and that was like an accordion. It was all like little pleats and that.
Yeah.
Then the other ones, you'd hang them from wall to wall, one end of the wall to the other, and then crisscross them so that they met at the centre of the ceiling.
Yeah, we had those as well.
Yeah.
And they really they really made it in terms of the whole room looked decorated.
Oh, absolutely.
And trees. You had obviously the Christmas. Did you have the real Christmas tree?
We had the real Christmas trees. The artificial ones didn't come out for years after. And we had the same decorations, I suppose, from once the eldest in our house on down to myself being the youngest. I'd say the same decorations.
They were always used.
Always
and
used.
The coloured lights?
Yes, all coloured lights those times. No LED, no white lights, thankfully.
Yeah, and I'd say there was mighty excitement taking them out.
Oh, absolutely. And then, knowing our luck, there'd be a bulb gone.
Yeah.
So you'd have to go around and twist every other bulb. And the bulbs that time were so small and thin, and trying to find a spare sometimes wasn't always easy, but we always got lit up anyway. So we did. But compared to the decorations now, I would much prefer the ones from the olden days.
Yeah, they were magic, really.
They were.
Yeah. And I suppose these days we're so used to seeing lights and we're so used to seeing decorations all year round. But you have to, I suppose, transport yourself to back then when the decorations only came out once a year.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, there was no Easter garlands or any of that crack.
No.
It was just Christmas and that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then sometimes I say in 20 years' time, the decorations that's been used now will probably have the same magic for other people of a different age group.
Exactly. The younger people growing up today, they'll be looking back saying, oh, remember those little Santas and those little niggly bits. Because I'm sure it'll change. And the decorations, oh God, I love the old-fashioned decorations, even though you don't really see them anymore.
Go up to my attic,
There's a few up in the attic. We'll have to get them down.
Get St. Anthony.
And the holly as well, Mary. You love the holly.
Oh, yes, yeah. Well, holly, you see, was in abundance those times. Compared to now, it's very hard. The holly we got this year came from Donegal.
Imagine.
Here.
Because you have to have the berries on it.
Yes. But there were so many holly trees that time in every part of the country, not only out where we came from.
And where would you hang the holly then?
Up over the fireplace, there'd be, what do they call it, a mantle board or a mantelpiece.
Yeah.
You'd have bits there, maybe a bit on windowsills, up over pictures, wherever you could get it to hang freely, I suppose.
And get enough of it.
Exactly.
And Mary, the presents there, you mentioned the different types of presents, the little trucks and the musical instruments.
Yes.
Again, probably, obviously in comparison today, simple presents, but magical presents.
Magical. And the games then we had at Christmas were Ludo, Snakes and Ladders. There was a ring board.
Yes, I remember the ring board.
Games of cards. But the trouble was with Ludo or Snakes or Ladders, the dice often went missing.
Yeah.
And you couldn't play it without the dice.
Yeah.
And then we'd renege on games. Renege means you'd count wrong or something to get ahead of whoever you were playing against. The games of cards then, trying to think, there's 25 I didn't like that. Snap, Beggar My Neighbour. And then the adults used to play whist or solo.
Right. Card games.
Yeah, but now they were for adults.
And they wouldn't play for money or anything like that?
Certain times of the year they would, but like money that time it might be a penny a game or something.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be like a poker classic now.
And I'd say when the adults were playing, the kids were gone. Out you go.
Out you go or keep quiet.
Yeah. That's gas. And then the foods, Mary, we'll just touch on that again real quick. You had the special breakfast or the additions to the normal breakfast and you had the ham and the turkey. And would you have, like we have today again, I suppose you wouldn't have had as much variety when it came to the veg, would you have?
You wouldn't, no, because really the main vegetables those times were carrots, parsnips, turnips, carrots and onions.
That was it.
That was it.
And gravy. Would you have gravy?
I think Mum used to make gravy. I can never remember seeing a box of gravy like Quicks or any of those. I cannot remember seeing those, or Bisto, no.
Bisto, yeah.
They probably made their own gravy from the juices, you see, of the meats.
Probably. And I'd say the prep was going on. Your poor mother, no more than the mammies back then. The prep would be going on for weeks.
Yes, oh, definitely. And I think the feathers, some type of the feathers of the turkey, they were kept and stuffed in pillows to make pillows.
Really? I doubt they went to waste anyway. You know,
flying all over the place. And oh yes, the New Year, they'd always have a goose, not a turkey, for a goose for New Year.
Right, a goose.
Yeah, and I think they used to boil the goose first and then roast it because the goose was full of fat.
Never knew that. And that was just a tradition, was it?
That was a tradition, yeah.
And what was the goose like? Different?
Greasy.
Yeah.
No, we never liked the goose anyway.
Yeah.
So we didn't.
And magical times back then, Mary. The family always stayed together, you know, I suppose, apart from them families that had people abroad in England and maybe America, you know, there was no like, oh, we're going to Spain for Christmas or we're going to here for Christmas. It was really a family time back then.
It was unheard of those times, like to leave the country. Actually, it was unheard of to leave the county, maybe the truth's be known. But like you never heard of women going shopping to Dublin those times. Never. I'd say maybe they'd go to Sligo maybe twice a year for something if they really couldn't get it in Boyle, or if they'd go to for a hospital appointment. But other than that, they never shopped anywhere, only Boyle.
Imagine.
Ballahadreen then was a favourite with a lot of other people. There were the big market days in Ballahadreen those times, November Day and May Day. Huge markets on the streets. Livestock, fowl, poultry, all kinds of everything.
And only twice a year?
Only twice a year, yeah.
And did Boyle have any of those as well?
Boyle always had a fowl market, which I think was over opposite the guards' barracks. People would come in and sell their turkeys and hens or something. Then there were fair days in Boyle those times, which took place up on the Crescent. I think years before, I can remember they were up the Green.
Right.
And the cattle would be standing up against the walls of the business premises, and they'd be coming and bidding on them, and the farmers would always have sticks, and there'd be an odd row at it, verbal most now, no hands flying or that. But they brought huge business to Boyle town, and indeed to other towns as well. And of course then there was talk of a cattle mart in Boyle once, but that never went ahead. And then they lost the fair days in Boyle, and no more than any other town, because I think health and safety were stepping in. Could imagine having one now, what it would be like.
Oh, stop.
You'd have inspectors from
far and wide.
Absolutely.
So Mary, you were into Boyle many a times when you were young.
Yes, and of course the biggest day in Boyle ever I can remember was the All-Ireland Fleadh Cheoils. We were brought in, and I think my brother and I were the youngest. We were left sitting in the car with someone minding us up at, it was called that time Leland's Corner. But to look anywhere, it was nothing, only crowds upon crowds of people. Everywhere you looked, people. That was the biggest day ever I remember in Boyle.
And how old were you, can you remember?
What year was it in?
I actually don't know.
Oh, God.
We'll have to do a bit of research on that for the notes.
Yeah.
But I can imagine, you know, even today, like I even remember the gala festivals, how busy the town was back then.
Absolutely.
But I suppose it's so rare now to see the town that busy that even today, if we went into the town now and saw them kind of crowds, you'd get a shock. And I can imagine as a young person, like as a child, to see that many heads and that many people, sure you wouldn't know what was going on.
But it was so magic because when you'd open the window of the car, I think maybe we left it open, all you could hear was music. Music. People standing, the musicians sitting on chairs around corners, playing, crowds of people, others dancing there. The one thing was there was no rough people or no rows or anything like that ever at the Fleadh Cheoils those times.
Yeah, everyone was there for a good time.
Yes, yeah.
And is there any other big days then you'd remember in Boyle, Mary, as a child? Or even later on?
Not as a child. I think when we came back to Boyle in 76, the Nissan Classic.
Yes.
That brought huge crowds to the town. Huge. Now, we didn't get to see much because thankfully we were busy. I remember another time, the most amount of buses ever I saw in Boyle was when the Pope was in Knock. The buses were coming up the Crescent, coming from North of Ireland up to Knock, and thankfully they were hungry.
Yeah, they stopped in with you.
Oh my goodness me, the amount of traffic went that time through Boyle was unbelievable.
Jeez, I remember seeing the photos of that, thousands of people.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think, was there any other big event in Boyle? Of course, when the gala festivals were on, they were huge. There was huge interest in those. They were very well ran. A great crowd of people that time organising them and everything. And great music. There was something for everyone at the Gala Festival that time. And of course the pleasure grounds, the
football,
soccer.
Yeah,
yes.
the five-a-side.
Yeah.
The tug of war, I remember.
Doon Shore then had its activities linked in with it.
Yeah, there were mighty days though. I remember even looking at the brochure and they'd have, say, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday and longer too. And they'd have all the different activities. And really from start to finish, it was jam-packed. That you could go from the pleasure grounds up to the Crescent, down to around where Lovage is now. There was always something happening.
There was.
There were brilliant days.
Fantastic.
And great committee members. Jeez, I can imagine the organising to go into it. But the music and everything.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And there didn't seem to be a huge financial call on people to give money towards it, because I think they just did different gigs leading up to it, the committees themselves, and
fundraisers and things like that.
They were brilliant, so they were.
Yeah. So Mary, you moved then more permanently to Boyle in 1976.
Yes.
And you opened the Little Chick.
We opened the Little Chick on New Year's Eve 76.
New Year's Eve.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about the early days in the chipper, say getting the building, getting ready. Why New Year's Day? Were you waiting for that day or just?
It was just that the place wasn't ready to open until New Year's Eve. And of course we thought, okay, there'll be a few around, but it was packed. I think we didn't get closed the first night until 2 a.m, which was unheard of then. There were hard times because we worked both of us, say, the 7 days, 7 nights a week and that. But there were different times that were more enjoyable. There was no much violence or that. The dances over in St. Joseph's Hall, you would be packed after it. But there again, if two people had a disagreement over something, it was a slap or a box and it finished at that. And people were different those times. I personally think to what they are now. There was more conversation between the people.
Yeah.
People had time to talk to you.
Yeah, more social.
Yeah, you meet people now and the first thing is the phone will ring. Sometimes you'd be glad when it would, but...
You might.
Another great memory I have, again, I'm jumping backwards again, the show day in Boyle.
Yes.
I think it was in the month of August. It was always on a Wednesday. That would be packed. People in from all parts of the country, men and women, because they'd have competitions, say, for knitting, sewing, crochet. Then in the gardening sector, whoever had the best potatoes, the best head of cabbage. I think that horses jumping at it, the show did. They had.
They probably would, yeah.
They had. And that night then, there'd always be the show dance in St. Joseph's Hall. And I think it was Mick Delahunty played in latter years in that. But unfortunately, for more reasons than one, the show day had to finish. But fortunately now with the summer show, which has taken over from that and has proved to be a great success and very well run again by lots of people who are busy people in their own right, but volunteer their time for it.
And back in the chipper, you know, times were different, like as you were saying, I suppose people weren't in a hurry back then, you know, there was no rush on people. They had time to talk, time to actually wait for their order, and there was no big hurry. And Christmas time, I remember working in the chipper, there was always a special buzz around Christmas time. And you know, I think it was people coming into town to see Santa, number one, coming into town to do their bits of shopping, and then to have extra people, relatives and friends coming home from abroad for Christmas. The little chick was the main stop, was the first stop for a lot of them on their route home for the curry chip. I'd say you have some stories throughout the years of people dying to get in for the curry chip after coming home for Christmas.
It was fantastic because you'd look forward to seeing all the different people that you remembered from the previous year coming home. Then they come along, maybe they'd have new grandchildren with them, whatever. But they were as excited to see us in Boyle, all the people of Boyle, as the people of Boyle and us were as excited to see them. That's such nature and welcome though for people those times, you know. And unfortunately then, of course, the other time you'd meet a lot of them as if they were home for a funeral or that. And of course, in the summertime then was another great time for people coming home. One family always springs to mind every summer they came home, the Timon sisters.
Oh, yes.
And they were like models. Models. Lovely, lovely family. They always stuck out in my mind because different occasions during the year, but especially the summertime, they'd have a longer holiday. It was a joy always to see them and all the others that came home at different times of the year.
And the chipper was the main stop for a lot of people, as we were saying. I remember, especially at Christmas time, I suppose, for those that were home, they'd kind of get around and try to see everybody. And if they didn't meet in the pub during the night, they'd surely meet in the chipper on the way home for the catch-up.
They did indeed.
So it was such a big hub, wasn't it, for people?
It was. And those times, of course, the pubs closed a little bit earlier maybe than what they close nowadays, you see. I remember the pub time during the week would always be 11 to half 11 at night. That was the Monday to Friday. Then Saturday was a bit later, but in the beginning the pubs closed at 10 o'clock on a Sunday night.
Imagine, and you were home then. I suppose you'd be finished at what time?
12 at the latest.
12 at the latest.
Yeah. It's just amazing how times have changed, hours of business have changed, everything has got to go on half the night now.
Yeah. Well, up until 4, 5, 6 o'clock some mornings, it got to a point where, you know, the buses would be coming in from Killaraght.
Yes.
And they wouldn't come into town until maybe 4.
You know as well as I do, many nights we left the shop at 5, half 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
The crows were always out.
The crows were always out. You'd nearly see them on the way you'd nearly see people on the way to early mass.
Yeah, and I often remember just going to bed, and Paddy Conlon, I think was his name those times, he used to sweep the streets. And I often heard Paddy giving us the rounds over stuff left outside on the street. We didn't personally leave it out. And then was it Sonny Regan? Sonny Regan, I think, came along as well. He might have been attending to the footpaths, but my goodness me, they were fantastic times though. There'll never be times like it for my family again.
Yeah.
They have great memories of the business, living over the shop, but I don't think any of us ever want that lifestyle again.
Yeah. You had great times, and even Carlo used to always talks about the magic of Christmas, because I suppose ye lived in the business, so it was never, a lot of people wouldn't even understand what that's like, because your home is never your own, because there's always people in and out and things like that. So his favourite thing about Christmas was closing the door on Christmas Eve and the last customer going, and knowing then that the shop was closed for Christmas Day and that you'd have complete privacy. And he just thinks, he always says how magical that was.
Until one year, I used to always say, well, you have great comfort Christmas Day, you need never lock the door. But one Christmas Day, I was cooking the turkey out in the prep room out the back in the combi oven. And of course, I hadn't locked the front door after coming in from Mass. So I was going down the hall to look at the turkey, and coming up the hall to the living room, I met this fella coming down the private hall towards me. And I said, hello. He said, Mary, would you ever come out and get me a burger and chips?
Oh, stop, on Christmas Day, Christmas morning.
Yes. And I said, you know, it's Christmas Day. Jesus, he said, I didn't even know what day of the week it is. Don't worry, I said, come on out to the shop, I'll get you something. So I remember going out and getting him, putting on 2 steak and kidney pies in the microwave for him. And he going out the door, he was so apologetic. He didn't even know it was Christmas Day.
Ah, bless.
So that finished me preaching. It was the only day of the year you need to lock the door.
Yeah, that's gas. I wonder. You just don't know, I suppose. You know, that could have been his Christmas dinner at the end of it. He mightn't have had something else.
Possibly.
Yeah. But I'd say, you know, it was nice to get that break, to close the door and know that your house was your own for that day alone, and you'd have no one knocking or no one. I remember the noise of the door opening, you'd have no little bell or that, you know.
But looking back, there were hard times. Like, we only took Christmas Day off and Good Friday from... We used to open Good Friday until I think 6 o'clock when we closed then. But looking back was stupid.
Yeah.
You know, up half the night.
Yeah.
Half your life gone away.
Yeah.
When I see Chinese and Indian now, say in Boyle, 11:30, tough luck. If
They're
you were
right.
looking for it, they have the people trained, and that's what we should have done long ago.
Yeah. And it went on for years, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
So Mary, you've told us so many stories about your early days in national school, what life was like back then. Can you just run through some of those times for us so that people can hear from the horse's mouth, as they say, some good stories and what life was like?
National school, we all went to Killaraght school. We lived in Bridgeoak Parish, but we went to Killaraght school. We walked to school every morning, but if it was very, very wet, Dad would always bring us in the car if he wasn't gone to a fair. And if he was gone to a fair, our teacher at that time, Mrs. Brennan from Monastrate, and she was very good, we'd always get a lift with her. Great memories of Killaraght School, 2 massive big rooms, 2 teacher school, of course. And I always remember at the back of one of the classrooms there was a crow's nest in a wooden box halfway up the hall, and we'd love when the birds were nesting there. It'd be distraction for us. But the one thing I always will remember in the winter time, you always brought your lunch to school with you those times, which they wouldn't have the same variety of fillings in the sandwiches those times as they have today. But you also brought a bottle of tea. Flasks weren't so freely available to us anyway. You had your little, that time there was Iril coffee in a glass bottle. You might have that bottle, or maybe a sauce bottle, wire sauce bottle.
With the tea in the bottle?
Yes, the tea made at home, the bottle, and you'd have your sandwich. In the winter time, there was a massive big fire grate in the big schoolroom, and there were 2 walls either side, and all the children's milk tea bottles were lined up each side. And halfway between, say, that at 9 o'clock or 9:30, I can't remember what time we started school, halfway between that and lunchtime, the bottles to the front were moved to the back, the bottles from the back were moved to the front. I remember a few times someone's glass bottle would crack from the heat. But then what teacher would do, she'd have a cup or a mug or something, and we'd all give a drop out of each one's tea for the child who lost their
bottle in the
with
day.
the explosion.
Oh, God.
Then there was a big playground area, and it'd be either football or they had jumps. You know, a rope going across, and it'd be up so high, and then when you were able to jump over that, they keep moving up the rope for us. I remember vividly there was a lady living beside the school, B. Farrelly, and she'd come out an odd day into the garden in the summertime, and she'd play a melodeon, it was called that time, and we thought it was the equivalent of U2 today. Unbelievable. The church then, of course, was across the road. Angela's bell ringing. If funerals were there, then we'd be dying to get looking out the windows to see what we could see. And then from national school, we went to boarding school. The 4 girls of us, I don't know whether to say fortunately or unfortunately, were sent to boarding school. We absolutely hated leaving home the first day. You never got home from boarding school those times until November. Halloween you got home. I think You had 5 days and home again then at Christmas and again at Easter. But you were allowed visitors. You'd have a visitor maybe every Sunday from home, Mum and Dad, and they'd always bring biscuits, cakes, sweets or whatever like that. Boarding school was very lonely though for the first year. Very, very lonely. Sleeping in dormitories. I think there was about 30 of us in a dormitory, but you were in bed, supposed to be asleep at 9 o'clock at night. And those times then we had to get up, I think, at 6:30 in the morning for 7 o'clock Mass every morning.
Before school?
Before school. After Mass then into a big old, I think they called it a refectory or something. And you had to eat the porridge. If you didn't eat the porridge, you got a crack on the back from Sister Kenny's. No, I know boarding school might be nicer, more comfortable today, but it's just something...
Different back then, Mary.
Different back then.
Yeah.
But it was either that or get bicycles and cycle into Boyle that time, you know. And the roads those times weren't a patch on what they are today. There'd be a lot of them gravel roads and
That's actually true, you know. I suppose I'd never have thought of that for little kids like that lived in Killaraght and them places, going to secondary school wasn't an easy thing.
Oh, it was not.
You know.
There were no school buses that time, you see, to bring them into Boyle.
And Boyle would have been the closest.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
Boyle, Ballahadreen would be a lot further. Then when we finished in boarding school, I did a secretarial course in B. Regan's in Ballahadreen. And that enabled me then, I started work first with Allied Irish Finance, which was a subsidiary of Allied Irish Banks. So there was a bank strike on actually. And I started with Allied Irish Finance straight after the bank strike. And I remember I was there 6 weeks and I got a call from the provincial head office to see would I be interested in starting work in the bank. And I remember at that stage saying to them, it depended if the money was better, I would. And the money was better. So Allied Irish Finance, being a subsidiary of AIB, I finished up with them after a week and joined the old provincial head office in College Street in Dublin, which I absolutely loved.
Did you, Mary?
Dublin was fabulous those times. The people were lovely, except old bank managers, snotty old crowd that wouldn't say good morning to you. But Dublin, absolutely fabulous place, fabulous people in it. You know, we often went to the dances in the different national, the Ireland and all these, the Irish club. We'd walk home at night from O'Connell Street out to Fairview, out through Summerhill, the loveliest of people. You would never be afraid, a crowd of girls walking home those times.
And how old were you then, Mary, when you were living in Dublin?
I would have been, oh my God, 18 or 19. Oh no, sorry, it'd be near 20.
Near 20.
Yeah. But sadly, the one big thing I always remember, it would have been about 4 or 5 years before I finished in Dublin. I was just coming up to Lear Street one Friday evening, going down for, that time it wasn't called Connolly Station, Westland Row. Oh, I don't know what it was, the train down to Sligo anyway. And just coming up to Lear Street, I heard 3 massive explosions and I knew it was bombs. So I remember starting crying and saying I didn't know which way to run. So I went back to the bank and the porter there had an idea where they were. And I remember he said he'd walk me past O'Connell Street and I wouldn't go down the normal way down through, Talbot Street was the way we'd always go down. I went down by the quays and over that way, and I can still hear all the sirens and guards' cars flying and everything. And the biggest fear was that another one would go off near the railway station.
Yes, of course, because they'd always be the prime target.
Yes, but thankfully they didn't. I think that time was there 30 odd people killed between the 3 explosions. And coming down the train, a girl I knew well from Elphin, she getting on the train and her head all cut and splinters of glass in it.
Really?
Yeah. But that was Friday. But then the worst part was going back Sunday night.
You'd not known what's ahead.
Not knowing what was ahead. I was afraid of my life going back Sunday night on the train. And at that time there was a bus strike. So we had to walk from, which is now Connolly Station, out to Fairview. But the only saving factor was those hundreds of people walking at the same time. But you know, after hearing 3 explosions going off on the Friday night, you had this awful sensation, is there going to be another one?
Oh, you'd be petrified.
And then getting up on the Monday morning, walking in and not knowing, go up Talbot Street, go in by the quays or where.
You didn't know. And then I suppose for them at home, seeing you going off on the train, that must have been hard for them.
Exactly. But like, there was nothing talked about, I'd say, for a month after. With the customers coming into the bank, even amongst the staff, it was all the bombing. Did you know anybody? And of course, lots of people that were there, they had known some people that died, and unfortunately, I do know 2 sisters who were very badly injured in it. The Meehan sisters from Killaraght. But neither died as a direct result of the bombings, fortunately. But at that young age, you know, a bomb was unheard of, certainly coming from Killaraght.
I know, yeah. Coming from Killaraght, God.
And then I came back to Boyle in 76.
Yes.
And we got married in 77. And then chick came along after that.
The little chick then.
And 3 chicks.
3 chicks is right. So we have, God, that's great coverage. So we started in Emla, the early days of Christmas and all the traditions with your mammy and daddy, what life was like back then. As you said, life was much simpler and you had much less, but you were much happier in ways, you know.
There wasn't as much. I always remember the old transistor radios. We'd bring them to bed at night. You might have to give one a slap to let it start and give it a thump to let it finish. They wouldn't be the best of shape. But we used to love listening to Luxembourg. That was the favourite radio station.
That's what it was called.
Luxembourg. And then I remember there was a pirate station, Radio Caroline, and that would kind of cut in over Luxembourg. And I remember then in the kitchen they'd have a big old pie radio, and on a Saturday night there was a man, Dingo. What was the name of the programme? Dingo. Was it Come Dance With Me or something? We used to love that with Mammy and Daddy. And it was all Cayley music. And he'd play requests for people. Dingo. Take the floor. That was it.
Take the floor.
Absolutely brilliant.
Magic.
And then Monday to Friday then, before we go to school in the morning from 8 to 9, there were little programmes, we called them on the radio. Wheelings of Finglas was one, I remember. Jacob's Biscuits. And there was this lady, Frankie Byrne was her name. She used to always be talking on Jacob's programme. She was kind of an agony aunt. And people would be taking the crack out for anyway. I remember somebody wrote in once, "Dear Frankie, I'm going out with a man with a wooden leg, should I break it off?" Didn't know whether it was the romance of the leg.
Brilliant.
Oh, fantastic
Brilliant.
times, you know.
You've a mighty memory. You know, we always say that, but you do when it comes to names, places, programmes, phone numbers, licence plates.
Yes, but
mighty
as
memory.
Carlos says, like, if you said, "Ma'am, where did you leave the keys 20 minutes ago?"
Haven't a clue.
St. Anthony.
So that's great, Mary. Great to hear those. And I'm sure there's people that are listening that will remember even some of those programmes themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
You know. And then, so they were the early days, and then National School, Boarding School, Dublin, and then back to Boyle in 1976 to open the chipper. 3 little chicks, and you're now in Boyle in your own lovely house. And you've seen Boyle change, Mary, over the years a lot. You know, you were in Boyle as a young girl, you know, as coming into those fair days, all of that with your daddy. And you see Boyle today. A lot has changed.
The sad thing is, for me to think I know everybody is sick and tired listening, we have no hotel in Boyle. When the population of Boyle wasn't as great as it is today, in the later years we had 2 hotels, kept busy all the time, the Royal, the Forest Park Hotel. But years before that, there was another hotel up the green, the Princess Hotel. Pat Brady had a small hotel, the Rockingham Arms, which still stands, not as a hotel. There were 5 hotels operating in Boyle, imagine, at one time, and they were all able to make a living. I think what's sad for me, though, to see some of the older shops gone, say now, through retirement, through the owners being deceased or whatever. Jim Casserly, and who lives in Great Meadow, her mum and dad had a lovely grocery shop, which was between McDonough's and Matmo's. It's now part of McDonough's premises, I think. They had a lovely, lovely shop, and I can still see their delivery bicycle outside it, a black delivery bicycle, where people's groceries were brought to their houses. Go over Patrick Street, there were so many shops over there, unbelievable. I think at one stage there was 2 or 3 little grocery shops in Patrick Street alone. Go over Main Street, you had the famous Fred Perry, who had the first supermarket in the west of Ireland. He opened in Boyle. You had Gerry Dodd. Claire and Emma's father had another lovely grocery shop further over near the Bank of Ireland, where Mary McGee has her drapery shop now. That was too very busy. Then D.H. Burke's was the other side of the road beside Logan Knott's. They were all doing business.
All at the same time, Mary?
All at the same time. Thankfully, we still have Bowls of Boyle there at the corner, which is great to see. It's still looking very well and doing business, keeping people coming into town. The chemist, of course, Brogan's is still there, I remember. Another chemist shop down in Main Street, O'Leary's. There was another one where the Boys Shopping Arcade is near there, Ruth O'Malley. That was 3 chemist shops, and they all busy.
Imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Different times, much busier town, and I suppose back then Boyle was a hub for the whole surrounding hinterlands.
Of course it
back
was.
Then.
It was.
Yeah. Hopefully we get back to that. Wouldn't it be great to see? I know we're all talking about it.
Yeah.
And it's not the first time it came up in chats on the podcast, but a hotel.
It'd be lovely, even a 20, 30 bedroom hotel. You don't need all these exclusive jacuzzis, leisure centres attached to them.
Not at all. A couple of rooms, a function room, a little cafe. That's all you need.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, even when people have funerals now, they have to leave town and go. Carrick-on-Shannon, Kilronan, which they're lucky to have, I won't take from it. But just I think it's nice to think if a hotel eventually came to Boyle.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I think it'd be the makings of it, really.
It would.
It might bring back some of them old traditions, you know, of people coming into town on a Friday, maybe going to the post office, going into the cafe in the hotel for a cup of tea, and, you know, even the old memories of the Royal, you know. And I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't have a lot of memories, but I remember being in the little cafe at the right-hand side, just where all the glass was.
Yes.
And, you know, you'd go in there and you'd be able to get your carvery dinner or whatever. Yeah. And then you'd walk through the other little section in the middle. And there was always people sitting there chatting, having a cup of tea.
There were. It was a great meeting point. Then you see the bus stopped outside the Royal.
Yes.
And on the opposite side then stopped at Daly's.
Yes. That's right.
I remember Doherty's Bakery, where the florist shop is there now. That brought huge business to Boyle. Early morning, the people would be lining up waiting on the fresh bread coming from Carrick over there.
Imagine.
Yeah. The long French sticks that time.
And you, as a business owner yourself in the town, Mary, there must have been a great buzz, you know, because there was so many people in business as well that you know, you could always chat to each other and,
Yes,
you know,
yeah.
great community.
People had time to talk to each other. But I was looking at Thomas Connolly. He had a photo up of Boyle, was it in 1985? Just a photo somebody took at random. There was more cars and traffic in Boyle in 1985 than there is today.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, the change.
Yeah, I think hopefully it'll come back, and I know the buying online and things like that has affected it, but hopefully the buzz will come back.
Hopefully, and that people will kind of bring back the older traditions.
Yes.
You know.
Yes, yeah. I love the old traditions, and I think, you know, a lot more people, we've talked about it before, are taking a step back and bringing back some of the older traditions and making it more about family and less buying and things like that.
Yes,
you know, so it's lovely. So Mary, I think we'll finish on that. We've covered so much, you know, the early days, Boyle, the community, and what you love about Boyle yourself. And you've shared so many stories with us over the years. Brilliant, brilliant stories, brilliant memories. And I'm sure you've jogged memories for a few people today with the chat. So thank you so much for joining us. We'll go now and have a cup of tea.
Thank you, Mrs. Cretaro, the second.
Thank you, Mary. And thanks to everyone for listening.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for today. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. If so, we'd really love if you could share the podcast on social media. You can find us on Facebook by searching for Voices of Boyle. We'd also love to hear your feedback and suggestions, so feel free to reach out to us via our website at www.voicesofboyle.com. And finally, we're always looking for new guests, so feel free to drop us a message if you'd like to jump on and have a chat with us. Thanks again, and chat soon.